to another episode of Rock Boys Football Coach Drink. The Missouri Tigers, they get their guy late Sunday night at the quarterback position. Former Penn State quarterback Beau Pribula committing to Missouri. This one fires me up. As a Big Ten fan, as a Michigan fan, I've seen a lot of football from this kid. And although it's never been consistent because he's been that quarterback two behind Drew Aller, whenever this kid's on the football field, it's a small sample size, but the sample size is telling me this kid can play. Now, he's one of the bigger names in the transfer portal because of the circumstances of how he left Penn State. Look, I get why a lot of college football fans look at that situation, and it's a little bit off-putting. It's a little bit frustrating. What I'll say is the frustration should not be pointed at Beau Pribula. It probably should be pointed at some of the people behind the curtains who are making these decisions and creating the timeline in terms of how college football is operated. Look, Beau Pribula wanted to be a guy in 2025. He wanted to start at the Power 4 level. I personally think he's very capable of starting at the Power 4 level. When Drew announced he was coming back to Penn State for the 2025 season, Beau was put in a weird spot where he's clearly capable of starting at the Power 4 level, was not going to get that opportunity at Penn State. He even said when he was transferring, I wanted to stay and play with my brothers in the college football playoffs. But because of how the calendar works, and if he wants to find his new home heading into spring practice and fall camp, he had to hit the transfer portal. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's just kind of the reality of what the college football calendar looks like. I think a lot of college football fans are hoping that there are some tweaks made, giving guys like Beau Pribula the opportunity to continue to play for his Penn State team in the college football playoffs, but also have the opportunity to find a landing spot at some other place going into 2025. Now, Beau Pribula, this is not the point of the episode, was to talk about the college football calendar. The point of the episode is to talk about Missouri in the transfer portal, talk about what I think Beau Pribula can bring to Missouri. Where it starts is, hey, it's one thing for me just sitting in my basement telling you guys this kid can play. I think the more telling aspect is all the interest that he garnered when his name hit the transfer portal. There's a lot of people who are a heck of a lot smarter than me that think this kid can play at the Power 4 level as well. You look at Beau Pribula, when you see the sample size, you like to see it, right? 66% completion percentage, 420 yards, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception in his career. He's also an extremely dynamic athlete, and Penn State kind of used him as, I don't know if I'd say a gadget quarterback, but they used him in a lot of different packages to lean into what he can do as an athlete, in which he's very dynamic running the football and some kind of quarterback design stuff. This kid running an offense, I think, one, the arm talent kind of gets slept on a little bit because he was kind of primarily used as a running quarterback. I think you're looking at a legit dual threat quarterback that can put pressure on a defense from a lot of different ways. We all know what he can do as an athlete. If you don't want to respect what he can do with the football in his hands, you're going to have to pay for it. The numbers of him throwing the football, they're quite good too. And then you kind of watch some of his games. He came in for Drew Aller on the road against Wisconsin and won them that football game in the second half. There was a point in the season where I looked at it and said, I'm not totally convinced that Beau Pribula might not be the guy to run this Penn State offense better than Drew. Now, that might have been a little bit overstepping, but I think this kid can play at a high level. And if you build an offense around him and lean into his skill set, this is a quarterback that I think can give a lot of SEC defenses a lot of trouble. This has been the year of the mobile quarterback. In the landscape of college football, quarterbacks that can hurt you with their legs are starting to have a lot of success. Beau Pribula is one of those guys. Want to get a little bit more into what he brings to this Missouri offense? Want to get a little bit more into what Missouri has done in the transfer portal as well. Now, before we get into it, as always, it's been a blast breaking down these commitments. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Beau Pribula a little bit more. And again, I think it starts with, it's a little bit of a, I don't even know if I'd use the term risk. It's probably a little bit of a risk because you're bringing in a quarterback that does not have a large sample size of him playing really good football. But the small sample size that he does have, it's really exciting. You look at the difference between him and a guy like Miller Moss. Miller Moss, to me, probably a little bit more of a safer get. You kind of know you're going to get a quality power four starter. Beau Pribula, the unknown's a little bit bigger than a guy with Miller Moss, but I'd say the upside, like what he can bring and how dynamic he can be, that's also higher than Miller Moss as well. And I'm a fan of Coach Drink leaning into the upside. And I'm also a fan of this marriage, if you will, because if there's a guy that I trust to build an offense around Beau, it's Coach Drink and this Missouri offensive staff. He's a guy that I don't know if would have a ton of success in every single system because he's a unique quarterback. But if you can get him in a system that leans into him as an athlete and that leans into what he can do at the quarterback spot and the specific traits he has, specifically being a dynamic quarterback with the football in his hands, I think this is a guy that can give a lot of SEC defenses some problems. And you look at what Missouri's done in the portal, I think there's a lot to like, and it's not necessarily the most exciting breaking news national media is going to cover it transfer portal class, but you start looking at it and say, all right, Nate Johnson, Tracy, edge rusher coming from App State, Keegan Trost, kind of a plug-and-play guy on the offensive line. Dominic Gaddis, a guy I know quite well as a Michigan fan. Dominic Gaddis, he won the starting job at the center position coming out of fall camp for Michigan. And he was a guy that he came in as a defensive lineman, made the transition to the offensive line, not a guy that a lot of Michigan fans had on their bingo card starting for this Michigan offensive line. That's exactly what he did coming out of fall camp. That's another potential plug-and-play guy on the inside. You continue to scroll down and say Ahmad Hardy. That's a guy that, to me, there were not many better running backs in the transfer portal than Ahmad Hardy. As a true freshman last year, he brings everything you want to the table. Yeah, kind of a nice blend between Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel. You look at those two running backs last year, they both excelled at different things. Marcus Carroll, a little bit more downfield, wants to invite physicality. Nate Noel, a little bit more of a speed and space back. I think Ahmad Hardy blends those two running backs together at a high level. Right? He's 5'10", 205, can run behind his pads and be really physical, but also when he gets to the second level, he can hit the home run. You look at Mekhi Bayer and Josiah Trotter, two bona fide starting caliber linebackers that have shown they can do it at the power four level. Obviously capping it off with a guy like Kevin Coleman, who's one of the more dynamic wide receivers that we saw in the SEC last year at Mississippi State. It's not the biggest names that are coming into Missouri. It's a lot of really quality football players that you kind of know are going to give you really, really damn solid reps at their respective position. And it doesn't sound like Missouri's anywhere close to being done. And you look at how Coach Drink's going about building this roster, top 20 high school recruiting class, top 10 transfer portal class. That's how you want it to look. He's marrying recruiting the high school ranks and recruiting the transfer portal exceptionally well. And even though Missouri fell short of expectations in 2024, Coach Drink's putting this program in a spot to compete at a very high level in the SEC every single year. And that's really all you want from a roster building standpoint. We'll continue to break down the commitments as they come. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.